Hello, Year 10. I've got another video for you here. I was going to try and make this one a bit of a quick one because I expect to see maybe some first drafts of this answer before we tackle the question in class. So the question is, the UK is dealing effectively with the problems that come with an ageing population. Discuss this statement referring to data and facts. It's a novice question that I made up, but it's got all of the elements of an evaluation question. So you've got your command word discuss, which means that you're going to be assessing, and another way of saying that is that you're going to be evaluating. You're going to be weighing up the pros and cons of the topic of the question, that statement that you've been given, how the UK is dealing with an ageing population. So you can underline stuff in the statement like the UK. That word effectively is kind of like your command word as well, because you're talking about the effectiveness of how it's dealt with an ageing population. And we're thinking about the fact that the UK is coming into the last stage of the Rostow model, not the Rostow model, last stage of the demographic transition model, which is the age of mass consumption, which is when the population starts to kind of become a bit top heavy in terms of the amount of dependence of an older age, due to the huge high amount of people working, the large population of men and women working constantly, and then eventually getting older and older. Germany is a really good example of this, with a top-heavy population pyramid where you would have your births here leading to a kind of large workforce here. Here's your workforce. Here's your births, not as much as the working population, not as large as the working population, and then the deaths are starting to rack up towards the top of the pyramid, and your elderly population growing because of the fact that this population is getting older and older. So this is constantly going up. Okay, so how do we answer this question? We'll do a brief mind map. How is the UK dealing with an aging population, or a population that's getting more vulnerable? And I'll put that word vulnerable in there because I think it's a really important one for you to refer to in your answers. And we'll just think of some of the things that the UK is doing. So there's our centre mind map. So the first thing that we know, and it kind of rolls off the tongue, is that they're investing a huge amount of money into this. In 2018, 2019, the amount of money spent on the elderly or elderly care was £2.2 billion. Now this went up actually in 1920, and we know what happened in 20. Come back to it later, but COVID is going to lead to an increase. I'm wrong here. I've actually just mixed up my figures, but it's 22.2 billion and 23.3 billion was the increase. So apologies there. A lot of data is going to be thrown at us in this question, so it's important that you remember your numbers as I've just displayed. So 22.2 billion was spent in 2018, 2019, and in 2019, 2020, 23.3 billion was spent, and you could link this possibly to the ring that needed to be put around COVID that the government constantly was referring to. Care homes and making sure that the elderly had their shopping and things like that. So that's spending. That's going to be an important aspect of the question. How do we raise money for that spending? Now, when a population gets older, the workforce is going to be depleted. So a depleted workforce, how do we deal with that? Well, there's a number of things that the UK does. And one of the things it does is it looks for migrant workers to replace people. So migrant workers have in the past, since the 2000s especially, come from Eastern Europe, when countries in Eastern Europe joined the EU. Now what's going to be a bit of a problem with that? It's going to be Brexit. Brexit's going to have an impact on the amount of migrants that are coming in. So less migrants coming in since 2016 Home Office bill, and that's a Home Office bit of legislation that meant that legally migrants had to have a certain level of education before they could come in. Most points being given to migrants who came in with PhDs, for example. So that's going to have a heavy impact on the amount of migrant workers that can come into the depleted workforce. Now, the grey economy is a really important aspect of this question. We've talked about it in lesson. What is it? It's use of elderly to continue working past retirement age, or to continue working as volunteers. So past retirement, where they will still earn money, or as volunteers. And another aspect of the grey economy is going to be the amount of money generated from spending of the elderly, from elderly spending. So that money is obviously going to get taxed in many ways, and that's going to go back into the economy. Another interesting fact is that if there's a certain percentage of tax on pensions, where people who claim their pensions early lose a significant portion of that. The government doesn't want people getting their pensions early. Another aspect of the grey economy is that the elderly are paying towards their own pensions. And so a percentage, a portion of their own pension. Okay, now finally we're going to come down here to a couple of things. For example, what is the government doing to deal with this idea of the population being vulnerable? They're trying to encourage them to be healthier, and one of the ways they've done this is actually by increasing the retirement age from 60 for men, 60 for women, 63 for men, to 66 for both. This was in 2010. And then, like I said, a lot of data that we're going to have to remember. And then this is expected to rise, 2020. This is expected to rise to 68 for both by 2040, 2050. That kind of, those date ranges. I know I've given you the exact date, but a lot of information here, and those exact dates are not popping into my head right now. But do look it up in your textbook. You do have the textbook information here. Actually, here 2046 is when it happened. So 2046. Just erase this. It's going to be an important year for the UK's economy because it's going to increase the age of retirement to 68 in that year. Now, what does this mean? Well, data has suggested that populations working longer are healthier. So the population of elderly may become even healthier and less dependent. This is going to help to decrease the dependency ratio. And then there's going to be a number of other things that they do to decrease the dependency ratio of the UK, which is quite high right now. UK's ratio is quite high, is over 50%. We worked out in class there the other day that it was UK ratio is officially 63% right now, though that doesn't take into account the number of dependent people on unemployment benefit, for example. You might even think of the number of people at home taking care of their children that are not working as well. So there is a huge amount of factors to consider. Another thing they do is that they encourage them to stay active and encourage elderly to exercise. Things like that money over here is going to be really useful for generating income to put into outdoor gyms, facilities for care homes where the elderly can improve their health. For example, aqua classes. Now, you'll notice that I've gone through a couple of things that are beneficial, and then there's aspects of, for example, COVID putting a strain on the elderly, where they had to use the NHS a huge amount. And of course, the older people, the more elderly people there are, the more people there's going to be in hospitals at winter time when they're picking up flus and things like that. And it was clear that during the COVID pandemic, the infrastructure was not there for them to deal with that. So you've got a huge amount of things that the government is doing, but at the same time, I think the depleted workforce and the impact on the NHS are your areas where you need to say, these are areas that the UK needs to deal more effectively with the ageing population. Okay, I hope that your first draft of this answer goes well. There'll be a subsequent video to help you out with this question where I show you how to properly structure the answer, but we've gone quite far over time on this video, so I hope this was useful, and if you have any